Good afternoon and welcome back to Gulfstream Park. Welcome back to Gulfstream today. I'm Gabby Gaudette, joined by Andy Serling. Welcome back, Andy. It's been a few weeks, but we've definitely missed you.
Well, thanks. I've missed you guys, actually. It's nice to be back. It was warm in New York, relatively speaking, but it's a little bit warmer down here. It's awfully nice.
It's much, much warmer here. And as we get into this weekend's program, we've got some good races. Again, we've got 10 races on tap tomorrow, but an 11-race program on Friday.
What better way to start off the year than an 11-race card here at Gulfstream?
Why not?
I can't wait.
Hopefully with some winners as well, but a good race as a good racing card as well. Now looking at today's program, we do have some carryovers, and we started all off in today's first race. We do start the rolling super high five. That's $1 wager, and that is over $17,000 carryover today. The first race does start the early 50-cent pick five as well. As we get into the latter half of the card, race 5 does kick off the 20-cent rainbow pick 6. That carryover is over $33,000. And as we get into race 6, that does start the 50-cent late pick 5. And looking at the sequence this afternoon, I couldn't necessarily find a single per se, but the past couple of racing cards, they have been pretty tricky in terms of finding singles, and obviously you really do want that when you're handicapping the multi-race sequences.
I agree. I think if you're going to find a single on the whole card, it's going to be the second race in the pick 6 as well as the first race in the late pick 5. I think that's the 6th race with the 5-horse that looks like he's sort of overwhelms the field at a short price. But after that, the races are not easy, and I mean that's what gives you opportunities to make money. It's not going to be easy to hit multi-race bets, and in essence, multiple tickets are your best way to getting there. We'll try to put a caveman ticket together, as I did here, and we'll start it out. And it's not a bad way to start out by talking about it, because I'm not using horses who are favored, and that's the 2-horse in this race, or 3-horse Samus, so I just don't like at all. I like the combination of the two, and we'll talk about the race. 2-9 in the first race, 3-9 in the second, 5-10-12, 3-7-8. Give ourselves a chance in a very tough race to close it out. 1-5, 8-9, some firsters as well as horses that have run. But this first race, I want to talk about Samus, who's favored because of Castellano start out. And I think you and I have the same opinion of this horse, and a lot of it's based on the last replay.
Absolutely, and we'll go and take a look at that last replay on the 13th of December here at Gulfstream. The number 8, Eddie Castro, was aboard that day, and we'll talk about this. Obviously, it looks like she's full of run. She's perched at the top of the stretch, and then essentially she just kind of flattens out.
I thought Eddie gave her a perfect ride. I mean, sometimes he's a rider that's a little bit impatient, but in here, I mean, he's asking her to keep up. She's taking some kickback, but he'll end up sort of easing her out. She saves ground almost the entire turn before easing out the race. I mean, this is the exact kind of trip that you want to get. She looms up like she's going to be right there, if not win it. And she not only doesn't win the race, but she blows second. And to me, that's a very bad sign for a horse that's simply going to be overbet because Javier's riding it.
Yeah, she's 2-1 right now with early money, but again, this is how we see perhaps the eventual winner of the race does kind of come out slightly to her path. Maybe that had a factor of it, but the 2 closing from off the pace winds up beating her for second there. So again, she's going to be overbet. Perhaps 7 furlongs is in her best distance here, playing devil's advocate. Maybe on the cut back to 6 furlongs, we could see a different story. But I go against her here, as do you. You land on the 9, Sherry's win, to try to beat her.
Yeah, my feeling is I want to use the 2 and 9 because the 2 who we both have in there looks to be the speed. How much of a dirt horse she is, how talented she is. If 6 furlongs isn't a little far for her is really a question. So I figure you get the speed, and then I'll take a goofy horse as my closer, and that's the 9, Sherry's win. Obviously, she's going to need this race to come apart. But if the 2 isn't able to hold on, I think it presents the possibility that it could fall apart. And a horse like the 9 who's turning back, going to be a square price, I'm taking a shot.
I also like the 2 is true here for Ricky Griffith, and this is another horse who's coming out of Woodbine races. Last time she was on the main track was at Fort Erie on a good course, but again, she's got some things you have to like about her. She's got that natural speed, and she could use that to her advantage. The 7, Starship Tammy, is going to be my top selection. She is dropping in class, and I think she's going to improve with the added distance of the 6 furlong. She really did get into a bit of trouble last time out coming down the stretch, and I think with an unhindered trip today with the added distance, yes, she is 1 for 21. It's going to be tough, but at least she's finding a class relief.
Yeah, my problem with her was I'm just not sure she's really a dirt horse, but she doesn't exactly have a ton of competition this race.
Exactly. We'll move on to the second race, a maiden special weight going out to the turf course at a mile here, and this is another interesting race. You have the 3, Chant for Kitten, as your top selection, first-time starter for trainer Mike Maker.
This horse, I think, was entered the first weekend that I was here and was scratched when a race came off the turf. And I'm not big on statistics statistics that involve very small sample sizes, but it's a pretty impressive statistic for trainer Mike Maker, who has some very, very impressive numbers overall. He's 4 for 6 with first-time starters in route races at Gulfstream. He's 5 for 6 hitting the board. I think the only one that didn't run well was a very big price. So he's pointing live horses here, and as you can see, they're winning, and they're paying in the $10, $12 range. This horse is a half to a couple of turf winners, a full to Kitten's Queen, who was very good, won over 350,000. Also half to Casaba, who was a very good dirt horse that ran around here for Phil Gleaves. I'm just going to go on the trainer angle.
And we could very well see this filly show up in debut. Even you do see the high percentages, the good statistic that you did show there. But a lot of these other horses have already been exposed, especially, you know, going a route of ground on the dirt, like Hypernation on the outside with Javier Castellano in the saddle. I kind of like the 4 Regal Roma. You'll get a good price on her. And Anthony Pecoraro, this is another statistic here, just turf sprinting to routes is about 14% and a positive ROI of about $2.50. And she's coming out of a race where I remember watching this race live, actually, and kind of the gallop out. She made up a tremendous amount of ground going 5.5 furlongs on a good going at Laurel Last Out. She was beaten by Sensible Match, Newcomb, some horses that really figured in that race, but the key point was her energy kind of in the latter half of the stretch and the gallop out. So that's my premise on picking the 4 Regal Roma.
Yeah, I have a stat because I knew you'd like her, because I knew you couldn't resist that horse from Maryland.
Laurel.
And I figured I'd get right off on the right foot and pick on your selections. Anthony Pecoraro is 0 for 19 stretching out maidens on the turf. And I hate this kind of move because I love this horse. I agree with everything you said about this horse. And I originally had this horse right in there. And I thought every time I fall for one of these horses that close the ground sprinting in their debuts in the turf and they stretch out in the turf, I lose. And I saw this stat and I thought, you know what? I don't want this horse, even though I agree with everything you said about this horse running at the end. And the speeds were 1-2 in the race.
And you know what? I have been kind of picking on Anthony Pecoraro lately. Well, picking on his horses because I really do, in terms of saying that I like them.
I'm picking on him, saying I don't like them.
I'm waiting, so they'll show up one of these days. The 12 Hypernation, though, is another one to the outside by Bernardini, well-bred, 2-year-old filly. She hasn't really panned out on the dirt as of late. She's out of a mare Bear now. She was over a $1 million earner on the synthetic, actually. So we could very well see this be the case where she hasn't necessarily pounded out on the dirt, and they're trying a new surface today.
I'm a huge Jimmy Toner fan, and obviously a lot more of his success has been with turf horses. I hate Bernardini as a turf sire. I think one of the reasons he's starting to have a good year is they're finally figuring out to only put him on dirt. And I think this horse has talent, whether or not it's a turf horse. I thought Tiz Over was dangerous. Got a little bit of turf pedigree as well. Nothing really special in here and might be a better price.
Okay, we'll move on to the third race, the maiden 12,500 event, 5.5 furlongs on the main track. And we have a full field here. The 12 in action, I thought was an interesting one for Daniel Pita. Last time out was on the sloppy sealed track and was well beaten against maiden $25,000 company. But the one interesting thing that I kind of found from this race was, yeah, she was squeezed back at the start. But coming out of that, she was also kind of keen early. It looked like she was hard to settle and then was very wide coming down the final turn. Now today from that outside post position and looking at that last race, I wonder if she's going to show more speed today on the class drop.
No, you and I saw this exactly the same. So this horse has absolutely no chance whatsoever because I completely, that's exactly the way I felt. And I thought getting to Luis Saez, who's an aggressive rider with that outside post, this horse would be forwardly placed. You just say out in the clear, there's other speed in here, but at least this horse can find its own trip, I think, from the outside. And I also like the fact that it's not coming from a maiden 12-5.
I know. Another one that's not coming from a maiden 12-5 who has not been running very well but should show some speed is the 9 Lucky Greatness, a horse that I use in the exact. And we also have the 1 Tropical Rhythm. The connections here, again, very small sampling size, so I didn't even take the time to throw it up there. But maiden claimer, first-time starters on the dirt, actually. 2 for 5, 3 for 5 in the money, and a positive ROI of $2.60. That horse, unfortunately, does not get Lasix, actually, today with the debut. That was a late change.
Yeah, listen, I wouldn't be afraid of any first-time star if you like firsters in this field because they're not exactly going against horses that can run.
We'll take a look at the fourth race, an allowance optional claiming event going 1 mile on the main track. Scratch the 2, Smart Shopping, and I figured that this horse was going to take some play, and essentially that would heighten the odds on some other horses, which I kind of liked the presence of this 2 in the race. Unfortunately, she is a scratch. We're going to have to wait for a later day, but the 7, Little Priscilla, is very interesting to me.
I like the rider change to John Velasquez. I think it's a significant rider change for this horse because the other rider is kind of a guy who rode in New York a little bit and seen him down here. He's a very aggressive riding in the middle of the race. And I think she's a kind of horse that might benefit from John Velasquez relaxing her a little bit in the race. And, you know, you look at this race, and I thought it was a very interesting race as well. And the 8 horse, Vea Luna, you have second. I like had a real internal argument about this horse because they have been so ambitious with her that I wonder if it's going to blow up in their face, because shipping her out to California after a maiden win here to run the Chandelier, then going to Churchill to run in the stake, obviously they think very highly of her. I just wonder if it's going to have an adverse reaction that she ships so much around the country and run in these tough spots.
Well, it's interesting because sometimes we see it play a damper on their confidence, and then, you know, especially when they try, last time out, they tried Stakes Company on the turf as well. She's clearly not a turf horse, but now they kind of go back to the drawing board. They find a good spot, in my opinion. This is a huge class relief from what she's been facing in the past, and she very well could just find her gears today. But going back to Little Priscilla again, kind of slower times here, but I do think that the pace is a little bit murky in here. Who is going to be the clear-cut pace setter? We could see Sophia Song be the clear pace setter here on the stretch out if she takes liking to the main track, or even the 4 Chief Attraction or the 5 Silent Player could be close.
Yeah, I feel like Baby I'm Worth It. I mean, I do look at the pace projectors at Timeform US quite a bit, and they're fun because sometimes they'll clue you into things you don't see, and sometimes I just completely disagree with them, and I end up being wrong. But they do have the 10 Baby I'm Worth It, and they have this race as a fast-paced race, which I think is going to work in the favor of Little Priscilla, and I think that's one of the things you're getting. It also a race that on paper, as you say, it doesn't look like it has an abundance of speed necessarily, and I think a lot of people are going to be aggressive, as they often are here, especially at a mile.
Well, I'm saying I think there's a lot of horses in here that could have equivalent pace, and we could see some riders that have that Send-'em type of style as well, and we could see maybe 2 or 3 horses vie for the lead, and it could really set up for the 7 Little Priscilla.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I really do think the race goes through the 8 in a funny way, because you do have to sort of get sucked in by their confidence. On the other hand, maybe their confidence was just sort of wrong, and we'll see if it works out, because she has run against such better horses. A tough race. I think it lost some of the value with Smart Shopping coming out. What about Sophia's Song, who I have second, you have third? I thought she was dangerous switching over from synthetic to dirt, and I don't know if I put this up, but Sinatard is actually 6 for 17 going synthetic to dirt, but in a lot of cases the Canadian trainers are going to Fort Erie. He hasn't done it at all at Gulfstream, I don't think.
And we have seen a couple of, especially lately, in the first couple of weeks here, opening weekend specifically, and even the second weekend, we didn't see a lot of the Woodbine form hold. Now, again, even with a faster track, I'm assuming that we're going to get on the main track today. We have seen kind of that synthetic to dirt form kind of transition a little bit better over the past couple of weeks, and she's going to get bet, obviously, with Javier in the saddle, and the fact that she went gate to wire last time out, she could be a pace presence. Yeah,
we'll see if she's fast enough. I have her as sort of a secondary speed. She's actually bred to handle the dirt better than synthetic.
All right, with that said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the 20-cent Rainbow Pick 6. We do have a carryover today of just over $33,000 right after this. Welcome back to Gulfstream Park, and welcome back to Gulfstream Today. Gabby Gaudette alongside Andy Serling, and we're taking a look at the 20-cent Rainbow Pick 6. We do have a carryover of just over $30,000. Obviously, a very popular wager here at Gulfstream, and we're going to take a look at it today. $57.60 is the ticket, using a couple horses to start us off in this restricted maiden special weight, using 4 horses, the 1, 8, 9, and the 10. As we get down the sequence, I couldn't find a single necessarily. I'm covering my bases in race 6 as well, but I think we were talking about this. The 5, Don't Make Me Cry, does look to be very tough to beat in there. the 8-10 in race 7, 8-10-11 in race 8, race 9, 2, 4, 13, and to cap it all off, using the 10 and the 12, $57.60. We'll take a look at the 5th race, maiden special weight, 6 furlongs onto the main track. We have a lot of first-time starters, or even second-time starters, who might be exiting, open maiden special weight company, now getting to the restricted Florida bred, and this very well could be kind of tough. You have the 1 pinstripe first-time starter for Todd Pletcher by High Cotton. This horse is very intriguing considering how Todd's 2-year-olds have been running thus far.
Yeah, but it don't feel like, I think, we talked about this beforehand, that Todd had a complete dearth of good 2-year-old colts especially, but really 2-year-olds in New York the first half of the year. He came here, he's won some races, but I don't think, maybe that Zuzu, was it Zuzu or Zulu that we will win the first day? That horse might be kind of promising. The rest of them didn't get exactly awe-inspiring figs, and to get the rail with this horse, who I thought the horse's work was actually pretty good, 10 2/5, and it's a High Cotton, 130 is pretty high. I just feel like we've also seen, he ran 2 here the other day, I think on the 23rd, and they got bet a little bit, and neither one of them ran pretty well. I don't think you have to fear Todd the way you have in the past years with these 2-year-olds.
I don't know.
I'm scared of him, but
I've been plenty of times where I've tried to play the angle, dropping from maiden special weight to maiden claimers or maiden claimer, debuter for Todd with his 2-year-olds, and it's just put me in a corner. He's been doing spectacularly well, and I think the point is he's given some of these 2-year-olds who might be a little bit more late developing the time that it does need to take from Saratoga, and then they've been coming just guns blazing here lately.
I'm going to disagree. Like even Rally Cry, who won here the other day. I mean, this was a horse that he talked about as his best 2-year-old. There's probably no trainer with a better opinion than Todd of his horses. And the horse lost at 1-5 in New York. It comes down here and wins and gets a 79 buyer. In past years, they got 92 buyers. It just feels like maybe the competition hasn't been that strong and they're winning, but I'm not fearing them. And listen, you have to use this horse, but I'm not going to run and hide from it if I want to bet somebody else.
Well, as you were saying, too, kind of a high price for a High Cotton, $130,000. You're looking at the sale, too. Another one went for $145,000. Another one went for $240,000 as well. So they paid pretty decently for this horse, a pinstripe, and does debut. Now, on the inside rail, yes, he's going to have to work out a trip from the inside rail. But to try to beat him, you're going with the 9, Mr. Smith, that he pleads. It does very well with his 2-year-olds, and this horse was really well backed in his debut.
It's a maiden 40, so the initial inclination is, why would you want this horse in a maiden special? And that may end up being the case. It's a stronger overall race, I think, than a maiden 40 would suggest. The winner, Sunny Ridge, the horse that ran second in the Champagne, ran second in the Delta Jackpot, and is a promising horse, probably pointing for, I'm not sure if he's here. If he's here, maybe the Holy Bull he's pointing for. He's a pretty good horse. So for him to be ambitious in here, I'm just taking a bit of a shot. This is a very hard race.
It is tough. The 12 Wonder Frolic is one who's listed as a gelding for the first time and does get Lasix, and he's coming out of maiden special weight company where he was soundly defeated. But that's an interesting workout there. 5 furlongs and 59-4 coming into this race. They've obviously given him time off and maybe tuned him up a bit. That was also kind of a key race. There were a couple horses who did go on to win next out, and even facing First Level Allowance Company really did hold their own, about finishing third or at least in the top 3. So this is an interesting horse to the outside, and you also throw in the 5 2-times book.
Yeah, I mean, to add to what you're saying, the second and third finishers in that Wonder Frolic race raised their buyer figures like 25 and 29 points, respectively, in their next starts. I've got 2-times book in there, a little bit of experience. Broke a length and a half to 2 lengths slow in that race. That race was won by Zulu. Thought could run second. But, you're grasping at straws. I know, you don't have Ralph Nick's horse in here at all, the 8. You're a big fan of how he does, as am I. This horse is a homebred, a first foal, but there is a little bit of pedigree. This race, you could probably use 8 and still not be sure you're going to win.
I used him in the first start of the pick 6. I couldn't leave off Ralph Nix there, especially with his 2-year-old first-time starters. But again, this is the race that you want to use maybe 4 or 5 different horses and maybe find that single that might come in race 6. And race 6, the maiden 12,500 event, 6 furlongs on the main track. We have the 5, Don't Make Me Cry, a presence here for Marcus Vitale and Javier Castellano in the saddle. We have so many other horses who, yes, they might be dropping from higher maiden claiming levels, but this horse shows the most consistency in form.
Yeah, I think we actually have a replay of the last race where this horse finished second. And, I don't think there's really much to say about it. It just feels like you've got a horse in a race that's just better than these horses. A 45 buyer figure might drown these horses. I know you're going to use the 7 as the turf to dirt angle, and that may well work out. I just didn't. I feel like in looking at these plays, and we'll put up my pick 5 ticket afterwards, if I'm going to have any success whatsoever putting up pick 5s up here, putting up a caveman ticket, the only way I really have a chance is to find a single somewhere so that you open yourself up to spread in more races. And in this race, I am going to single to start that pick 5 ticket. I'm just using the 5 with 5, 10, 12. 6, 8, 9, 10, 2, 4, 11, 13, 6, 10, 14. It's not an easy sequence. I'm hoping to turn it into a pick 4.
Okay, we'll take a look at race 7 as we move on. A maiden $35,000 event, a mile onto the turf course. And another interesting race, you land on the 5 Papa Pig here, a second-time starter, but getting to the turf and stretching out in distance for the first time.
I agree with you that the 10 is the horse to beat. It's interesting. The 10 comes out of a maiden race that another Bill Mott horse won, that came back and won here. But that horse was actually a horse that Richard Migliori and I had shown on Trips and Traps. That horse was the one who won the trip. This horse, I don't know, but Dividend's the horse to beat. I wanted to take a small shot. It's a first fall from a dam that was 3 for 20 on the turf, that was a much better turf horse. You know, the trainer has had he's had success with a lower percentage, but a good ROI, trying turf for the first time with non-first time starters and maidens. I just thought it might be a bit of an angle with this horse, making a guess in a race where I don't like horses like Hat Attack.
Yeah, I think this horse is...
He can win.
He could very well win, and that's why I kind of respected him in the top 3. But as a top selection purpose, or, you know, you look at Dividend, and the reason why I really like this horse is obviously maiden claimer first-time starters for trainer Bill Mott, especially sprinting on the turf. Not a strong suit, about 5 to 8%, quite honestly, in the past couple of years. So they've given this horse time. They obviously tried to get him to the turf last time out, was rained off, run on the main track, and now he's finally getting to a route of ground on the turf in his third career start. So I think this is the strongest angle for, obviously, this horse.
You don't think that it's Bill Mott sending over a homebred of his to be bred to Mr. Sidney, who was standing in France at the time, that you know that his friend Lee Einseidler gave him a season to the great Mr. Sidney, who I think has actually moved he's going to be in America. The 12 White Cape, what did you do with, you've left this horse out, but I mean, this is the horse who's got the most pedigree. Eye of Taurus was a multiple stakes winner on the turf for Kieran McLaughlin. I found a stat for Michael Matz, who's a terrific trainer. He's 0 for 12 with his first-time starters in maiden claiming race in the turf. I know it's a colt, and obviously you don't expect it to have a stud career like Mr. Sidney, but 35,000 right away with this pedigree.
That is why.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful pedigree. Kate Blanco out of the very nice mare and debuting at maiden 35. I couldn't take it.
Yeah, no,
quite honestly.
I agree. This is the one with pedigree. 10 guitars you've got in there third.
Yeah, the interesting horse here, when he debuted, he actually took a little bit of money. He was second choice there at 3 to 1, and he was carried very wide going into that final turn. Obviously, it was going to turn 7.5 furlongs in debut, but also going back and watching the replay, this is another horse who was very keen early. He was hard to settle, and I'm wondering if with that outside post position, instead of maybe just trying to take him back, trying to take him out of his wheelhouse, just kind of let him go and see where let the chips fall where they may in terms of pace.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hear what you're saying, and there are two schools of thought, because he is an interesting horse, particularly as he got bet. I think he hated the turf, personally. I'm going to be very curious to see how this horse ran.
All right, we'll go on to the 8th race, the $16,000 conditional claimer. A mile and a 16th on the turf, and the 8 East Rock. I believe you have a statistic here. First off, the claim for trainer Steve Claceris, and this horse is coming in with some legitimate turf form, but again, here's your stat.
Steve Claceris is a great trainer who does a sensational job. He's lousy off the claim on the turf. This was a horse who was entered also on that first weekend I was here. This is a different spot. It feels like there's a little bit more speed in this race. This race could have a pretty fast pace. He's not going to be involved right in front, but I don't think it's going to help his running style.
Oh, I did kind of go back and take a look at that stat, though, and he does kind of finish in the money 50% of the time, and a lot of the time that stat, kind of the low percentage, is horses first off the claim and stepping up to maybe a more competitive level, whereas he just maintains a lateral move with this horse. So, again, I stuck with him. That's the primary purpose, because I did see that low stat, and he also gets a top turf rider here, Luis Saez, who has been riding really well.
You know, it's interesting. He's listed as a new gelding in the form. Maybe he is. I'm interested in finding out if this horse is actually a new gelding. Spring About, and I agree, by the way, that he's the horse to beat. I'm not enamored with him, but he is the horse to beat in this race. He's coming in the race in good form, as you say, and he doesn't need to have the lead to win. The 10 Spring About, you've got second, I've got a top. I want to show this horse's race last time at the Meadowlands, and this is either a very smart pick or a terrible pick. Because on the surface of things, this horse, if he runs back to this race in the Meadowlands, he's a cinch in here. I mean, talk about a horse that took to the turf and has spent his career theoretically running on the wrong surface. I think the problem is when they first started running this odd turf meet they run at the Meadowlands, where they run only on the turf because their track is made up for harness races, it got an enormous amount of rain. They canceled, and it was a total bog out there. And it feels like there's a real possibility this is a horse that just loved the going as much as liking the grass. And now you have a much firmer turf course down here, and this horse might not find that course to its liking. I'm still going to take a chance.
I agree with you, though. I had to throw this horse in the mix, too, primarily because you look at the races that were run on that card as well, and even sprint distances or two-turn races on the turf as well. Speed held very well, and we saw a 90-to-1 shot hold for second. So I'm thinking that either it can go one of two ways. Either this horse is legitimate because he closed from off the pace and he won, very visually impressive, or it could have just been a fluke, and we could see him completely revert, not take a liking to this firmer course today.
He's in some ways the horse on this card I'm most intrigued to see run, actually.
Moving on to the 9th race, the first half of the late daily double, a starter optional claiming event. 5 furlongs on the turf, and we have the likes of the 13 Bold Thunder to the way outside. We haven't seen this horse since pretty much Saratoga in late July, and he's going to have to overcome that outside post position today.
His last race at Saratoga was the first of about 47 horrific beats I took at the meet. I think we're going to go back and show his Pennsylvania Governor's Cup when he actually finished third behind Amelia's Wild Ride and Ben's Cap. If he runs back to these races, he's going to win here. And it's funny, you're taking a shot against him. I'm not. Mike Welsh had picked against him, and we all have a world of respect for Mike's opinion. Mike thought he might not be coming in this race as well. We were talking to him earlier. To me, I'm not worried about the post. He's faster than these horses. He's going to outrun them. But obviously, you have to ask yourself if you think the good Bold Thunder is going to show up. If he does, he'll win. If he doesn't, then somebody else can win.
Yeah, well, class purposes alone, yes, I do believe that this puts him atop the rest of the field. And I agree with you. He's naturally the fastest horse in the race. But 5 furlong sprint races, also anything can happen. You have plenty of horses to your inside. You have horses or riders who are trying to get into position early as well, and it could just completely create a disaster. But I do like the fact that he does have the most amount of speed. I went with a horse on the polar opposite side of the spectrum, the 2 Simon Bar Sinister, who's actually coming out of a decent race. Now, you have to like some things about his last race, and you have to hate some things about his last race, because we saw several horses, Dreams Gone Wild being one of them, and there was another Jamie Ness runner who since then have absolutely plummeted in form, facing like open $7,500 claimers and just not being able to win. So how strong was that race? Were horses tailing off?
Yeah, it is a good question. I think it was a good race, and I have him second because I felt like he took such a huge step forward that you start looking through and you think, you know what? The first time he ran a turf sprint here, he just got completely lost in that race, and it felt to me like he turned into a new horse. But I agree. I don't completely trust it, and as you say, it might not be that strong a race, but there's a chance that maybe he's just found a new career turf sprint and he's finally finding himself.
He very well could, and I honestly do like that inside post position for him because he has natural speed, and he should be able to just stalk a couple ticks off of the pace setters here. So I'm going with him on top. The 11, Padilla is another one I'll be using on the cutback and distance. Again, this is a horse who has been going well at a route of ground on the turf, now cutting back against much faster horses. It's going to be tough for him to close in time, but the horse in here is the 4 Partly Mocha, third start off of a layoff. He's sitting on a big race last time out at Churchill over the good going, and essentially this horse, it could set up for him too.
And nobody does better work with horses they claim on the turf than Mike Baker. I mean, his numbers are astounding. This horse has been training well. It was one of the things I was talking to Mike about, and he feels this horse is coming the race very well, and he watches the workouts. He's a very dangerous horse in here. Unfortunately, it's Castellano and Maker, so you're probably seeing the second choice, but you know what? He should be the second choice.
He should be, class purposes alone. We'll move on to the 10th and final race on the card, maiden $16,000 event, going 7.5 furlongs on the turf. And I had a tough time with this race, quite honestly, so I kind of land on the 12, Reagan's Odyssey, just almost by default. But this is a race where you kind of want to use a couple different horses. I land on him because she's coming in with consistent form, and you get Luis Saez. Yes, she draws that outside post position. I essentially go with such a short turn or short run going into the first turn too, caught out wide. I wonder if she's going to be caught out wide going in that turn.
Yeah, I'm worried that you're going to have a fast pace in here, and she's going to be the third horse on the outside the pace, and it may work against her. The thing about this race is that the horse to beat is the 6 Sister Superior. You've got her third, I've got her second. I had actually scratched into putting her on top because I was trying the 2 scratched. I can't in all good conscience take this horse on top. Her race 2 races back, she was a cinch in that race on paper to me, and got an absolutely perfect ride by Jose Lezcano. She scooted up the rail, and she stunk the joint up. She's a horse who looks better on paper than she is. And she might win this race because the others aren't very good. She's going to get a fast pace. The race is going to collapse. But she got Castellano. She has all the earmarks of a horrendous favorite.
Yeah, I couldn't take her as well for all those points alone. And plus, she's been going 1 1/8 miles, 1 1/8 miles, a mile. She just hasn't really been running closely. And as you said, the pace could very well fall apart and into her lap. But she does have to take a pretty considerable cutback in distance, too. And she very well could run out of time. Oh, you land on the 14 away outside Starship Stash as your top pick.
Listen, I'm not enamored by horses now breaking from post 13 at 7.5 furlongs. Not that you're any better. You've got the 12 in here. It's just, I had her third. I was 2-6-14. I didn't want to put the 6 on top. This is a horse that actually has some pedigree. I mean, you know, the dam has produced a horse that won on the turf. It was actually okay. There's some turf in the second generation on this horse. Ran once on the dirt. I just wanted to take a flyer with this horse because I kept looking at one horse after another that I didn't want either on a talent level or from a trip perspective. And I'm going to take a shot with this horse because she's going to be a huge price, and I'm not going to let the post position take me off of a horse that's 30 to 1.
Oh, why not? You need horses like that for those multi-race sequences, like the pick 5 and the pick 6, in order for you to hit them. But yeah, that's a wrap for us here on Gulfstream today. Races 1 through 10. Once again, with this 10-race program, the pick 6 does start in today's 5th race. We have a carryover over $33,000. We also have a carryover in that rolling super high 5 that does start in today's first race, as well as the early pick 5. And we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back just before race 1, and Larry Colmus will be up shortly with scratches and changes. Thank you for joining us here.